ground is coming up fast, like a huge mouth ready to swallow you. Your heart beats hard and you can barely breathe. You try the parachute cord one last time, after many failed trials, hoping for a miracle, but nothing happens. Everything below is a blur of colors, getting closer every second. You see every detail, every shadow, as fear fills your whole body. You close your eyes for a moment, realizing this is it. You panic as you feel the strong pull of gravity, and your final moments rush to greet you. This is the horror of wingsuit flying moments gone wrong. Wingsuit flying is a sport where participants glide through the air, wearing a special suit with fabric under the arms and legs. This suit increases the surface area of the body and acts like a parachute wing to slow the rate of descent. Yes, like Batman. And just like Batman did, the flight ends with deploying a parachute. But even Batman didn't have a smooth landing. In today's episode, we're covering 7 wingsuit jumps that went horribly wrong. From a parachute that refused to open to one that opened too late, to smashing into a ridge. Buckle up, and as always, viewer discretion is advised. Before talking about the horrifying deaths caused by wingsuit flying, I want to give you a quick idea of a skydiving sport that's slightly less dangerous: base jumping. In base jumping, participants jump from fixed objects using parachutes. Base is an acronym for these fixed objects from which a person can leap: building, antenna, span, and earth. Since 2003, many base jumpers have started to level up their adventures by using wingsuits, and that introduced Wingsuit BASE. One of the most famous tragic stories of base jumpers is the story of Amber Bellows. Clayton Hoyt Butler and Amber Bellows were a couple from Salt Lake City, Utah, and they were experienced in base jumping. Clayton and Amber loved an adventure, and they sought to make a career out of base jumping. They even hired the filmmaker Josh Lloyd to produce video content of their jumps together to boost their professional careers. And according to Josh, Amber had high ambitions to become a professional base jumper, and he called her one of the premier base jumpers in the world. And she was definitely on her way to success, as she was admired and recognized among the base jumpers community. Amber and Clayton took to the sky in an adrenaline-filled freefall on Buttermilk Tower, which is located west of Nowhere, Utah. They took on great, powerful adventures, such as Hellgate, Notch Peak, Mount Superior. Their 2013 Christmas wasn't just about the traditional mashed potatoes and turkey. They celebrated it by jumping from Rock Canyon. Rock Canyon is a star among the formations of Utah, known for its vertical walls that rise high above the canyon floor, which is usually rocky and uneven. It's also home to a variety of plant life, including trees, shrubs, and wildflowers, and wildlife such as deer, rabbits, and birds. The sport that ignited the spark in their hearts ignited the spark of their relationship as well. They celebrated getting their marriage license on January 24, 2014. And 2 weeks later, on Saturday, the 8th of February, Amber Bellows and her husband decided to step up their game. They decided to jump from Mount Kinnisava, a 7,276-foot rugged route in the southwestern corner of Zion National Park. The iconic Zion National Park stands proudly at the intersection of 3 major ecosystems: the Mojave Desert, the Colorado Plateau, and the Great Basin. That meant a spectacular view from the tallest cliff in the park. Zion National Park is full of massive sandstone cliffs of cream, pink, and red that soar into a brilliant blue sky. If you're going to get that beautiful view while you open your arms to immerse yourself in the hug of nature, who needs a honeymoon? Well, it's worth mentioning that base jumping is illegal inside Zion National Park. But that didn't stop Amber and her newlywed husband. They knew that base jumping was a risky sport anyway. Amber was the first to jump while her husband waited behind. She looked fabulous while she floated with the air above the powerful nature and sandy canyon. Suddenly, Clayton noticed his wife's parachute failed to deploy properly. He could feel the tension and horror from the irregular pattern of her leap. We can only imagine the horror she must have felt. From a moment of freedom to another of facing her dark destiny. flying towards the end. Clayton leaped after her but failed to reach her in time. After he landed on the ground, he found out that he was too late. Or maybe the jolt was too quick and too strong. Clayton stood in the middle of nowhere, baffled. He had to walk past her body for a further 2.5 hours to get help. I can't even imagine what was going on in his head. He reached the officials at 6:30 p.m., and he informed them that his wife was dead. According to the officials, since the mission was recovery and not a rescue, and the location of Amber's body was unknown in a fairly remote location with difficult terrain, they decided to wait until the following morning to reduce risk. The next morning, Sunday at 10 a.m., recovery teams flew a helicopter and located Amber's body. They lifted her using ropes and pulleys from the difficult terrain to a nearby ambulance. Amber's accident was the park's first base jumping death, and it forced the authorities to prompt warning about the dangers of the sport. Amber was 28 years old when she left life. The park superintendent, Jim Milestone, said in a statement, "It is just really sad, and our condolences go out to her family and friends. Base jumping is so dangerous, even for those who are experienced like Amber Bellows. That is one of the reasons it is not allowed in the park." Her videographer, Josh Lloyd, said, "I represent athletes of all kinds, and I've never come across such a horrible situation like this. Amber is probably one of the most genuine people I've ever known. She is just so lighthearted and her laugh is so infectious. You don't run into people like this every day." Looking back in time from Amber's tragic disaster, the very first Wingsuit was born in 1930. Since then, several dozen different models have appeared, remodeled, and developed. And just like any sport, there are championships and leagues organized to reward accomplished athletes. One of which is World Wingsuit League, WWL, where wingsuit flyers from all around the world compete to be rewarded with medals, trophies, and financial compensation. One of those flyers was Victor Kovács. It was October 9th, 2013 in China. Victor was 40 years old when he aspired to participate in the WWL and represent his country, Hungary. He was a 3-time Hungarian national champion and had made over 700 jumps. And just like any sport or even an art performance, you always train and rehearse. And that's what Victor did. He jumped at 2:51 p.m. local time. Imagine you're Victor for a second. You're having wings and standing on a high mountain cliff in China, looking at the hues in the sky that the powerful sun has painted. Your heart pounds like a drum. Below you, the valley stretches out like a green carpet, with tiny dotted villages and curved rivers. With a rush of adrenaline building up in your body, you take a deep breath, spread your wings, and jump. The sensation is thrilling. You float in a smooth, free fall, while you let the wind take you wherever it wants and towards the earth with relentless force. You twist and turn and twirl in a graceful dance with the wind. Feeling free and invincible, you're close to the landing point and you pull the handle to deploy the parachute. But nothing happens. Your throat is choked with fear and your heart pounds in your chest. You pull your parachute over and over again as hard as you can. Panic takes over your whole body, and you freeze as the ground comes up to meet you. This was what happened with Victor. People in the field watched him try to open his parachute, but it never did. Witnesses could only stand helplessly and lose sight of Kovács after his parachute failed to deploy. Nearly 200 firefighters and policemen were involved in the search operation, which was hindered by difficult terrain, according to Xinhua News. The next day, rescuers found Victor Kovács with a smashed skull at the foot of a 328-foot cliff in Tianmen Mountain National Forest Park in Zhangjiajie. The Red Bull World Wingsuit League released a statement saying, "We are deeply saddened by Victor Kovács' passing, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his parents and friends during these difficult times. He will always be remembered for his deep passion for life and his spirit of adventure, and he will always be sadly missed in the wingsuit community."
Athletes who are here doing it because that's what they love to do and they're passionate about it, and that's what Victor would have wanted.
The organization pointed out that the sport involves high risk, saying, "For the last 3 years we have worked closely on safety issues with the athletes, manufacturers, and other experts. Still, When the world's best compete at the highest level in any sport, the risks remain. Little did he know it's not just about competing at the highest level. Sometimes performing an entertainment bit on TV can be dangerous as well. Do you remember the opening ceremony of the 2012 Summer Olympics when James Bond jumped with the Queen from a helicopter? Well, the Queen didn't really jump, nor did Daniel Craig. Their stunt doubles did, and I specifically want to talk about Daniel Craig's stunt double, Mark Sutton. Mark Sutton was born on the 13th of April 1971 in the United Kingdom. He was the son of a former lieutenant governor of the island of Jersey. He was educated at Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, where he won the Sword of Honor, and in December 1991, he received an officer's commission in the 6th Queen Elizabeth's Own Gurkha Rifles. He boldly served as an army officer until 1995. I'm assuming that that's why he started to develop a love for performing stunts. What do you think? During a segment of the opening ceremony of the 2012 Summer Olympics, Mark Sutton served as a stunt double of James Bond on a helicopter, alongside his friend Gary Connery, who was the Queen's double for the segment. They skydived out of the helicopter above the Olympic Stadium. The segment was and remains one of the most epic Olympic ceremonies of all time. His name started to be very well known in the stuntmen community. In August 2013, Epic TV invited Mark Sutton and 20 other top wingsuit flyers to a 3-day event in Chamonix, France, known as Helibase 74. If you're an extreme sports enthusiast like me, you're probably very familiar with this Epic TV because it specializes in extreme sports. In exchange for video footage of their flights, the website provided accommodations and helicopter access. That really shows how a lot of wingsuit flyers are just pure enthusiasts waiting for almost nothing in return, if you take into consideration that they literally risk their lives. On August 14, 2013, Mark jumped alongside Tony Uragallo in a short, warm-up flight near Leghan Do Tan. The flight was scheduled to last about 60 seconds. Mark jumped from the helicopter at 10,800 feet, traveling at speeds of up to 155 miles per hour. His free fall was flawless, and he twirled beautifully in the sky like a bird knows his way home. That lasted for only 20 seconds. Mark veered off course and crashed into a mountain ridge. You know what's the most frustrating thing about all of these accidents? It's that I couldn't find a clear reason for any of them. When there's a reason, you have something to avoid, be careful of, and be equipped for. But unfortunately, these are absolute accidents. A rescue helicopter arrived soon after Mark hit the ground, but the jolt was too strong and he was pronounced dead right at the scene. The jolt's impact was so severe that a DNA test was required to identify his body, and a spokesperson stated that he had no chance of surviving the impact. While Mark was equipped with a parachute during the flight for landing, it was left unused. An Epic TV spokesperson considered Mark's death to be an accident, noting that 2 successful flights with other wingsuit flyers were held prior. The same thing happened during the World Wingsuit League in 2013. While we lost Victor, 3 other flyers successfully completed their trial jumps that day. Just horrible disasters. Mark's death was regarded as a major loss to the community of wingsuit flying, as he was considered to be one of the world's best. His colleagues said that his death was a huge loss to his profession, and they flew in honor of him and his joyous life. Mark's fascination for thrilling stunts could have developed during his army time, but with Mario Richard, the signs showed up way earlier. Mario Richard was born in 1966 in Canada, and his interest in jumping started with a childhood fascination with parachutes and plastic soldiers. When he was 22, he took his first skydive jump near Quebec City. And it's fair to say that he was obsessed. From a skydiver to a full-time instructor, he said, "I was doing anything that kept me jumping." In 1991, Richard performed his first base jump in West Virginia from the 875-foot New River Gorge Bridge. He was a natural. Soon after, he began compiling base equipment, learned how to sew and build systems and equipment for base jumping, and started to jump everything high enough around his hometown. He followed the sport wherever it gained popularity. He even moved to Florida, where he started working for Vertigo Base Outfitters. Later in 2000, Richard relocated to Moab, Utah with the company. Moab was the perfect playground for this sport, and only a few jump spots had been discovered at that time. He wrote on his website, "The entire place was ours to discover." He collected adventures as if he were collecting sand particles from a beach. Richard's resume included more than 7,000 skydives and 2,000 base jumps. So, when I say he was obsessed, I'm not exaggerating. Richard fell in love with another adventure enthusiast, Steph Davis. She's an American rock climber, base jumper, wingsuit flyer, and one of the world's leading climbers. Steph and Richard got married in late 2011 and ran a business together, and they called it Moab Base Adventures. Their business offered jumps and training for new and experienced jumpers, base jumping, and rock climbing. They were living the dream. They took their jumping adventures to Europe as well. At the beginning of August 2013, Richard and Davis arrived in Trentino, Italy. They made numerous jumps, including off Trieste Tower and Monte Agner. On August 18th, they took a cable car to Sas-Pordoi to make a wingsuit flight off Sas-Pordoi. Davis successfully jumped, and Richard followed her with thousands of jumps under his belt. He hit a cliff close to the Piccolo Pordoi Towers. However, when something went wrong on the flight, none of those thousands of flights could save him. Richard's death was devastating for Davis, and she considered giving up on everything. Having struggled with depression before, Davis describes entering a grief period where she considered leaving life and following her husband. It took her months of talking to friends who had lost partners to determine whether she would ever be happy again. 4.5 months later, on New Year's Eve, she returned to wingsuit flying in memory of Richard. She jumped with pinches of Richard's ashes in her parachute, and that reminded her of why she started flying in the first place. She wrote in her book, "Base jumping's not safe. Road biking isn't safe. Driving cars isn't safe. Living isn't safe." So if the perception of the value or benefit of any activity is based on whether it could be made ultimately safe, that's sort of a losing battle, 'cause we're all going to die. This is probably the concept that all extreme sports athletes follow, including the next one on our list today, Álvaro Bulto. You might know him as the television presenter of the Spanish program Así se hace on the Discovery Max network, or from the 2007 celebrity dance program Mira Quien Baila, but he was a lot more than that. For 13 years, he directed and presented Frontera Límite, Boundary Limit, a show about adventure sports. Álvaro Bulto is a beacon in the world of extreme sports. He dedicated his life to experiencing intense emotions through adventures such as free fall, skydiving, rallying, swimming with white sharks, and motocross. Álvaro Bulto was one of the first Spaniards to fly over Antarctica again with his companions Santi Corella and Tony Lopez in 2007. They used special suits to combat the 60 degrees below zero that they faced. And they made it look so easy that they didn't look human. They looked like invincible superheroes. You see, that was just what he knew all of his life. Álvaro was born on June 11, 1962 in Barcelona, Spain. His father, Paco Bulto, was the founder of the Montesa motorcycle factory. So, would you be surprised if I told you that he began touring Barcelona roads on a motorcycle when he was 11? He lived for the adventure. In 2013, Álvaro chose the Swiss Alps in Lauterbrunnen for a wingsuit base jump. On a beautiful high cliff, he spread his wings, jumped through the adrenaline rush, and glided at a high speed. What a view, and what freedom. To be hovering above the picturesque village of Lauterbrunnen, filling his eyes with the stunning waterfalls and majestic scenery. As an experienced wingsuit base jumper, he knew when to open his parachute, and he did. However, the parachute had a mind of its own. It just did not open until it was too late. That caused a great impact against hard ground. Álvaro lived for adventure and died for it at 51 years of age. He stated in interviews before his death that he lived experiences that filled him with positivity and took care of his mind. 2013 was the same year that Jonathan Flores was crowned champion at the World Wingsuit League on Tianmen Mountain in Zhangjiajie, China. He celebrated by saying, "There are no Olympic medals in my sport, but I feel I got my gold for myself and my country, Colombia." In Latin America, Jonathan was known as El Hombre Pájaro, the Birdman. A year earlier, in April 2012, he broke 3 world records in one jump. His flight was from the highest altitude of 37,265 feet from an aircraft and -49 degrees Fahrenheit, the longest distance wingsuit flight, 85,301.8 feet, and the longest wingsuit flight in 9 minutes and 6 seconds, all simultaneously. To break a world record in anything, you need to have practiced more than the average person. Can you guess how many skydives and base jumps Jonathan has executed? Pause the video and write your answer in the comment section. He accomplished over 4,000 skydives and base jumps. He kept jumping and training because he loved the feeling of freedom that jumping brought to him and experiencing the world from its highest point and back to the ground. In July 2015, Jonathan decided to train for the upcoming championship in China. Jonathan and 2 other athletes decided to train in the beautiful Engelberg Mountain, exiting from the Titlis in Switzerland. The descent to Engelberg provides a unique sight of glaciers, towering peaks, and lush valleys. On the 3rd of July 2015, Jonathan put on a prototype racing suit, and so did his friends. They stood on the Engelberg Mountain and hyped themselves up for this 3-way flight that was planned to last 8 to 10 seconds. His 2 friends jumped first and Jonathan followed them. They landed safely, celebrated, and waited for Jonathan. But he never landed. Jonathan was known for his big smile and optimistic approach. Danger was never associated with his spirit. Shortly before this jump, Jonathan said in an interview, "Before I jump, of course I am nervous. But the moment I jump, I have the biggest smile on my face." They had high hopes and waited a few more seconds, but in such a sport, an extra second means absolute danger. They planned the destination of the jump from the start point to the exit point. The path was clear, and there was no place for him to be found other than the base of the exit point. They did find him, but when it was too late, his body was found at the base of the exit point, and it is speculated that he might have caught turbulence or the suit interfered with his launch. In Jonathan's case, we can only speculate because there were no witnesses. When you take that leap, you can only focus on one thing: your survival. One mistake, half a second of distraction can cost you your life. And if we learned anything about his sport, it is that risk is always a factor, even if your focus is 100%. Athletes can only do what they have to do. The rest is fate. For example, there's a sport called freebasing. Freebasing is a mix of free solo climbing, which means climbing without the assistance of ropes, but with a base parachute attached to the climber's back. So, in case of a fall, a climber can revert into a base jump and survive. But after all the names I've listed so far, you already know that surviving isn't always guaranteed. As a matter of fact, it's pretty rare. The creator of this sport is actually the last on today's list. I'm talking about Dean Potter, a legendary free solo climber, speed climber, and base jumper. Imagine being the creator of a type of sport. What do you think are the skills required in a person like that? What kind of mindset would make a person come up with an extreme sport like this? Dean was born in 1972, and he taught himself to climb when he was in 10th grade in southern New Hampshire. Like many legends before him, he later quit college and pursued his passion for climbing. On August 6, 2008, he completed the first free base ascent of the deep blue sea on the north face of the Eiger. That is a challenging climbing route in the Swiss Alps. It's known for its steep technical terrain and stunning views. The name Deep Blue Sea emphasizes the deep dark blue color of the Eiger's north face. The glacier that covers it gave it the name Sea of Ice. Imagine climbing such a mountain and trying to contain your excitement the closer you get to the top, and resisting the trance that the hypnotizing effect that nature around you can have on you. Imagine letting go into the air, carrying the scent of snow in your nose and the distant roar of a glacier in your ears. That's not the only extraordinary thing Dean did. He was introduced to slacklining by Charles Victor Tucker III, who was one of the first 3 people to highline across Lost Arrow Spire. Dean completed a variety of highline crossings without a safety lanyard, backup line, or even a base-jumping parachute. Some of these included lines suspended as high as 3,000 feet above the ground in Yosemite National Park. Dean's mind had no limits. He believed that anyone could do anything, literally anyone, including his dog. In 2014, he released a film of him base jumping with his dog. The film was called When Dogs Fly. One of his most dangerous attempts was a wingsuit flight from Taft Point above Yosemite Valley. The attempt included clearing a small notch in a rocky ridgeline, and that meant flying through a narrow gap or passage between 2 rocky formations. As he leaped off the cliff, the world below seemed to expand and accelerate. The sensation of free fall was intense, with the wind rushing past his ears and the ground seeming to rise to meet him. He twirled like a free bird between the rocky formations and landed successfully. As he approached the ground, the jumper needed to deploy his parachute to slow his descent. The final moments of the jump were a mixture of adrenaline and relief, as he safely landed in the designated area. My question here is, if you were him and this beautiful, thrilling attempt went safely, would you do it again? On May 16, 2015, Dean and his friend Graham Hunt, who had also done that jump before, decided to give it another go. Not only was it dangerous, but it was also illegal. This meant that everything about the jump was done in stealth mode, from getting ready to even the time of day they chose to jump. Dean's girlfriend, Jen Rapp, and their dog joined them and stayed behind at the launch site as the spotter. Potter had strapped his iPhone to the back of his head and hit record before jumping to record Graham behind and above him. Potter's iPhone video recording captured him saying, "Ready?" and he jumped to do as planned. Potter planned to fly through the notch or go around the ridgeline if he lacked elevation. He had plans A and B. Rapp snapped photos of Potter leaping, followed closely by Hunt, and watched them disappear from her range. Seconds into the flight, Rapp heard a thwack, and a second later she heard a moan. She shouted in their direction, hoping the noises were from parachutes opening, not from the impact of bodies. She checked her phone to see if she received the usual text from Potter with the word "safe" to assure her that he had once again defied the odds. But this time the message was horrifyingly not there. She ran around searching for them, but with no luck. She returned to Dean's home, which was very close by, and found Graham's girlfriend, who sensed the danger. The 2 girlfriends went to the residence of Mike Gauthier, Yosemite's chief of staff and a friend of Potter. Rapp's photos showed Graham flying left, then right, then left, and a final hard banking right. Mike sent a team to search for the 2 men all night, but there was no trace of them. The next morning, a helicopter crew found a heartbreaking sight: their bodies. After Potter's iPhone was repaired, the video showed him a foot or 2 above the ground just before the video stopped. Investigators noted that Graham Hunt may have been distracted by phone calls and texts he attempted immediately before jumping, and that Potter may have seen his partner strike the ground and flinched, or he simply misjudged his elevation. Potter's and Graham's deaths brought the total number of base jumping deaths in U.S. national parks in 2015 to 5. Graham Hunt had worked as a firefighter and carpenter, among other short-term jobs. He was a humble man known for giving big, heartfelt hugs, reading books to children, and taking local kids bouldering. A friend of his said, "He was so present with people, no matter who they were." All the people on today's list lived for the thrill of the jump. They knew the risks and lived every day like it was the last. As we honor the memories of Potter, Graham, and all those who have lost their lives pursuing their dreams, let's remember to cherish each moment and never take anything for granted. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay bold and live brave.